Brothers, as attendees continue rolling in, I wanted to take a moment to introduce our presenters from Columns Fundraising, Mark Vokason and Wesley Wicker.
Great. Thank you, Dio. Let me share my screen so we can get started here. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Great. Brothers, thank you for your time. There have been some great sessions this afternoon, all I think for the benefit of Phi Gamma Delta. And it was exciting to hear some of the numbers that Rob Cadill shared with us earlier about the new member program and the increases that we're starting to see. So today, Wes Wicker, who is one of my business partners, he is a Theta Chi, but please be nice to him. He's still a good guy. I am a Fiji from University of Vermont, class of 1983. Our firm is a full-service consulting firm, and we have a very robust practice in the Greek world, working with local chapters of sororities and fraternities, and also on the national level with their headquarters. One differential with us is that we also work with hospitals, independent schools, colleges, universities, and social service organizations. So we bring a lot of different best practices from sectors of the nonprofit arena that a lot of times benefit local fraternity chapters. So let's talk really basic today about local chapter campaigns. Most chapters in Phi Gamma Delta, most chapters in any Greek organization need to be in perpetual fundraising mode nowadays. Many of our chapter houses are getting older, more wear and tear, require more maintenance, or just require a complete overhaul. We're involved in a lot of projects right now, renovation and substantial renovations to the tune of 3 million, 5 million, 7 million, and then complete rebuilds that can exceed $10 million. So people are raising a lot of money. Let's talk about some basics of how we do that. You just heard about communication. We'll touch on communication in a little bit, but Rod is so right in that the biggest complaint we hear is, you never contact me unless you want money, or I never hear from the chapter at all. So why would I be supportive now? So what we want to make sure we do, following the communication program, is really understand what's our case for support. What do we need, and how do we begin communicating that to our graduates? We also need an engaged house corporation. We suggest some type of feasibility study so that we can help you understand what your graduates think, what they like, what they don't like, and what they would want to see in a potential new building or renovated building. We also have to prep the undergraduates. Even though the graduates are the ones giving the money, the undergraduates play a big role here. They can make or break it as graduates come back for tailgates or alumni weekends, homecoming, and all of that. We have to make sure the undergraduates are ready. Talked about a communication plan. And then part of fundraising, for all of you that are on the House Corporation or you're members of your BCA, this goes for any organization that you're on the board serving. It is your responsibility not only to give your time and expertise, but also your money going forward. And that's the best way we can get other graduates that are not on the board to consider giving, because the board members are the most inside individuals and we want to make sure they're all on board with the effort. So the case for support, as I mentioned, we want to make sure we explain the need. Today, we find this a lot when we're doing interviews, particularly with parents of undergraduates. What is the number one thing that they want for their son? It is safe and healthy housing. So we need to be able to provide that need, and we need to be able to tell them, how do we get there and what does it cost? For graduates, we want to make sure we're appealing to the emotional connectivity to the chapter. A lot of our chapters are able to do that through Saturday afternoon tailgates. Wes Wicker and I happen to live in SEC country in Atlanta, Georgia. And as far as most people in the South are concerned, there really is no other football conference out there. However, and I did not go to an SEC school, by the way. However, football tailgates and weekends like that bring people back to the chapter and allow them to renew that emotional connectivity. And most importantly, and this is any type of fundraising, if you don't ask, you won't receive. Many of you have probably heard the quote from Wayne Gretzky, you never score on the shots that you don't take. So we always have to ask people for their support. So I'm the solicitor for your chapter house campaign. I want you to give money to our chapter house because A, B, C. We need to have definitive reasons as to how the money will be used. We also need to be able to explain why do you need the money? I mean, these guys that live in the house now don't seem to take care of it as well as we did when we were there. You need to be able to explain the structural needs, the infrastructure, HVAC, roof, all that typically have to be replaced every several years. This next one is real important. Who will manage my gift? Is it going to the undergraduate chapter? Is it someone on the House Corporation? Is it someone like Omega Phi, as we heard earlier from Caitlin, that has the accounting firm that they work with that handles it all? You need to make me feel very comfortable in giving my money that it will be spent as it was given. We want to assure the donor that their contributions will be well spent. This is to all the House Corporation officers, particularly presidents. As the leader of the group, I need to make sure, because we get these questions from graduates. Well, do you have an annual audit? What's the budget? Can you share that with me? House Corporation presidents need to make sure that they have that available. Do you have graduate managed social media? In talking about communication, this is so important. Most undergraduates have their social media pages. Most chapters have their social media pages. But is there a specific graduate managed social media page that the undergraduates can't control the content? Do you have regular corporation meetings? And do you have periodic town hall meetings? Now, granted, if we don't have phone numbers or email addresses for all of our graduates, it's tough to get the message out to the full graduate database. However, some is better than none as we go forward. Conducting a feasibility study. This is where we interview the graduates. We ask them what they like, what they don't like, determine their interests. Some brothers love bricks and mortar. Some brothers want to give a gift to do a rehab of the area of the chapter house in which they lived when they were an undergraduate. or to help build a new part of the house. Some brothers do not like bricks and mortar, and this is an opportunity to get those scholarship funds set up that you can use for recruiting purposes down the road to recruit the best students on campus. And then in the feasibility study deliverable, it's a report back to the House Corporation with an objective projection of what their potential success is in a campaign. You may be wanting to raise $5 million for a renovation, a major renovation, and your graduates may only want to support it to the tune of $3 million based upon numbers that they tell us during these interviews. Well, that may be very doable if you have $2 million somewhere else, or you have access to some debt finance, or you have cash on hand. All of that needs to be determined. We do find that a lot of chapters have existing debt, so we have to get the amount raised much closer to the amount that will be spent on capital campaigns. We also, it's important to note, and this is across all of our clients, for example, that are Greek or non-Greek, healthcare, higher education, only about 75% of our feasibility studies recommend moving into a campaign. Those that don't, it's because there's been a lack of communication, and that's going to take a while to fix, easily 6 to 12 months to at least start getting information out to your graduates. So it's important to know, again, you heard it earlier, communication is the key for all of us. Oops. Sorry, I skipped ahead there. If you remember nothing else from our presentation this afternoon, this is the key slide. This is the key slide. This is what we call a gift chart, and it helps us identify the range of gifts that we need for any capital campaign. And it doesn't matter if it's 4 million, 40 million, or 400 million. Capital campaigns rely on about 10% of the donor base to provide 90% of the funds. So what do we mean by that? Let's say your goal is $4 million for a major renovation. In order to make this $4 million campaign work, we need at least one graduate that will commit $1 million to the effort. We need another graduate that will commit 500,000, 2 at 250, 6 at 100, and 12 at $50,000. You see that those gifts, which total 20, equal $3.2 million toward your $4 million goal. That's almost 80% of your goal from only 20 brothers. What's real important to remember is that capital campaign fundraising is not a fair share campaign. What do we mean by fair share? Well, invariably, when we're meeting, when Wes and I meet with house corporations and talk about the fundraising process, there's always one brother that says, well, okay, if we want to raise $1 million, for example, and we have 1,000 graduates, well, everybody just needs to give $1,000. That's simple math. The campaign's done and we can move on with the project. It doesn't work that way. It's never worked that way. It never will work that way. It's not a fair share campaign. So part of the campaign process is identifying those top 20 prospects, for example, in this instance. And we really do need that $1 million donor. And brothers, trust us, they're out there because we've seen them commit 7-figure gifts to chapter house campaigns, fraternities, sororities. Those donors are out there. So again, if you remember nothing else during the rest of this presentation, this gift chart is so important. Very few gifts will result in 80 to 90% of your campaign goal. We do go public and allow everyone the opportunity to participate. You'll have some graduates, particularly younger ones, that will want to give you $100 or want to give you $500 over 3 years. That's fine too. That's what the bottom here, the many gifts are that will make you reach the goal. Typically in a chapter house campaign, we see anywhere from 12 to 20% of your total graduates that will give. So for example, you have 1,000 graduate brothers, you probably on the high end could expect 200 brothers to participate. We've had a few go higher than 20% of the total base, but that's very rare. So just want to make sure we're setting reasonable expectations for anyone that is moving into a future chapter house campaign. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Wes Wicker.
Great. Thanks to be with you. I'm pleased to be with you today, gentlemen. One of the things we always advise, and oftentimes Mark or I will meet with the undergraduate chapter, is to make sure they're coached to understand the importance of their role in a campaign. We're not going to ask the undergraduates to give money. We're not going to ask them to solicit money, but we want to set the stage, so to speak, and making sure that alumni feel like they are stepping into a welcoming environment for the graduates to come back. Always, when anticipating an alumni event, don't assume the undergraduates understand what is expected of them in terms of cleaning the house. So I would recommend a House Corporation member, at least one member, walking through the house before an event, before a homecoming or a tailgate or a Founders Day event, to make sure the house is properly cleaned in the eyes of your graduates, as opposed to what a clean house is defined as by an undergraduate. I also want to brief the chapter on what the campaign's about. So when alumni engage them in a conversation, they can speak intelligently about the campaign. So our message to you is to coach the undergraduates to make sure they perform up to your expectations during a campaign. Okay. Communications plan, I'd establish a timeline. What's going to happen, when, and how. So month by month during the campaign, you should be updating social media, sending out constant contact messages, print media. We often have alumni ask us, well, can we just do social media on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram and save a lot of money from print? And we say, no, you need to do it all, because some alumni, quite simply, are not going to look at social media. Many are not on Facebook, and your constant contacts or other electronic newsletter, other forms of electronic newsletters are going to hit spam boxes. And that's just the truth. The other thing we find is the typical chapter database has about 40% of email addresses, and many of those will bounce. During the course of the campaign, we clean up those databases and hopefully add a lot more email addresses. But the reality is, if you're only using social media, you're probably getting the attention of less than half your alumni. We're big promoters of Zoom calls, Zoom or team calls, where you get groups of alumni back together. During COVID, several of our clients had virtual cocktail parties or virtual tailgates when they couldn't attend social events together. And quite frankly, they're a lot of fun, and everybody brought their favorite adult beverage, and we had conversations about, old war stories, as well as what was going on in the chapter today and what the plans are for the future. So we encourage our clients to find the connectors. You know, one of the things I've seen is that everybody has a group of people they stay in touch with. And usually if you can get an alumnus to sit down and just go through their contacts on their telephone, you can probably update your database significantly, but just by simply going through the contacts. Every now and then we see one person in a 5-year era, and every chapter has one in every 5-year era who is a serial connector. That's somebody who doesn't just keep up with a handful of graduates, but keeps up with perhaps 100 people. And so finding those connectors during a campaign is really important because they can help reach out. They're the guys who stay in touch. So speaking through them can be very powerful. Mark mentioned this earlier, and I would emphasize the point that if you're going to launch a campaign, giving is not an option for the board. The board members have to be on board, so to speak. Why should an alumnus out there give to a campaign when the lead volunteers are not giving? So everyone on the board at the level of their ability needs to make a commitment. Mark mentioned this as well, but fundraising is an inside out and top down business. And the inside out part is getting the volunteers, your board members and the alumni who are closest to the organization to commit first. And then the top down part is go to your wealthiest alumni first and build up that campaign war chest before you go public with the campaign. If you find an alumnus who's willing to make a significant gift, like a 6 or 7 figure gift, you know, I often use that conversation when they commit at that level to take the opportunity to ask them, can we use your gift as a challenge match? Most often alumni who have the ability to make a gift at that level understand what a challenge match is. We're going to utilize their gift and promote their gift to challenge other alumni to meet them. And, you know, it's often a dollar for dollar match. I've had some alumni who would say, I'll give you a match and you have to earn my gift. So you, in fact, have to raise the amount of money they are giving. But the challenge matches are as much a public relations advertising tool to use as they are real challenges. So any alumnus giving at that level, they generally understand that you're dangling their gift out there, so to speak, to encourage other alumni to give. So going public, we usually recommend that our clients hit between 60 and 70% of their campaign goal before they go public. You want to give a sense of success, and you want to give your alumni confidence that we're not just talking about this, we're already several miles down the tracks, so to speak, that this is going to be a success. We just need you to get on board. And so going public includes a direct mail, ideally telephone calls between the volunteers and guys from their era, the alumni they know, the alumni that they lived with when they were undergraduates or they pledged with. And here's the truth, all the direct mail in the world, all the social media that you muster is not as effective as face-to-face solicitation. So one of the things I would strongly encourage you to do is practice your solicitation. You know, I'm often reminded of the story of Michael Jordan when he sank 2 free throws to win the first NBA championship when he was with the Bulls. And a reporter asked him, you know, was he nervous? What was going through his mind when he hit those 2 shots? And he said, no, he wasn't nervous at all. It was pretty routine because Michael Jordan shot 1,000 practice free throws a year. So when he stepped up to the line, he knew what he was doing. It was muscle memory more than anything. Solicitation is much the same way. A lot of people are not comfortable asking for money, but if you practice it and you sort of get used to it and you do it a few times, you can do it from muscle memory. It's not as stressful as many people make it out to be. And in fact, for some of us who have made our living, our profession doing this, to tell you the truth, it's the most fun part of the job to me, is to ask for that gift. And as Mark said, is if you don't ask, you don't get. You got to ask for the gift. Peer challenges are often very effective when you get a group from a certain era and you get one, you plant one alumnus, one graduate to make a major commitment, and that person asks his peers to follow through and do a similar gift to him. So that's our presentation today, gentlemen, and we'd be glad to answer any questions we can at this time. Not everybody at the same time, please.
As an aside, fundraising to us is a fairly simple process. There are steps you take methodically to reach the end zone on your campaign goal, but typically a chapter house campaign will take anywhere from 12 to 24 months. A lot of that is based upon the volunteer support, the number of graduates that are engaged in it and are willing to solicit their pledge brothers and other members of the chapter. So 12 to 24 months, much longer than our presentation this afternoon.
So, gentlemen, after you do your initial review analysis of the group that you're working with, of those 75% that you recommend move forward, what percent of those are successful campaigns, and how do you define success?
So, and that's an awesome question, John. So, for us, all of the ones that we recommend move forward generally are successful, and we are very calculating in the number that we recommend for your goal based upon what your graduates would have told us during the study. There's a lot of psychology in that. So let's say you want to raise the $4 million that was in the gift chart. We might come back and calculate everything up and say, well, your goal probably needs to be $3.8 million. And with a lot of work and effort, we can help you get to the finish line and raise that $4 million. You've exceeded the goal, and all of the constituency thinks, wow, what a victory. Our goal, we needed 3.8 and we raised $4 million. The flip side of that is if, and we've seen this, if the organization, if the chapter decides, well, we really want to raise 5 million because we want to have some that we can keep in the bank. You set your goal at $5 million and it gets out there and you end up raising that same $4 million, you failed miserably. Even though it's $4 million, you failed miserably in someone's mind that they didn't hit the goal. So we're very calculating in how we position that number. Things that are bad for fundraising, I mean, let's face it, these are fraternity chapters, and 18 to 22-year-olds sometimes don't make the best decisions in life, and every once in a while something will happen. That's not good if it makes the national news. The biggest things have already been talked about today. The chapter house has to stay clean. They have to keep it presentable. And here's the other thing. Sometimes graduates walk into a chapter house and no one introduces themselves to the graduate. That's not good for fundraising either.
Yeah,
So,
John, I can only think of two Greek campaigns we've run that didn't hit goal. And the truth of the matter is they both didn't come out of the box, so to speak. One, in both cases, right about the time we were going to launch the campaign, we had already been through a silent phase of the campaign and raised a fair amount of money. In both cases, the chapter not only got put on probation or was suspended from the campus, but their transgressions were such that they hit national news. I mean, their crimes, so to speak, went viral. And, you know, there's just no quicker way to kill a campaign than for your chapter to wind up on, you know, on national, the national wire, AP wire, or social media for their transgressions. So those are the only two I can really think of where I would say we weren't successful, and in many respects we really hadn't started. So, but generally we'll hit the campaign goal.
I can tell you, John, as an aside, non-Greek, this is one of those stories that you always remember. This was an independent school. I was involved in the feasibility study, interviewing their #1 donor prospect. In fact, he could have funded the entire campaign by himself. And, you know, all systems were go, and the school board, everybody was thinking, we're going to build all these new buildings. And when I interviewed him and asked, you know, what he thought his potential commitment would be for the campaign, he said, well, the headmaster is having an affair with my wife, so I don't think I'll be giving anything. That's an instance where that's not good for fundraising either. So, you know, in feasibility study interviews, you hear the craziest things, but people are usually very open and honest with us, and telling us what they want to do. Needless to say, that school didn't move into a campaign. Other questions? Well, John and Dio and brothers, we appreciate the opportunity to present this afternoon, and hope we've told you a few of the basics about capital campaigns. They're just very methodical. And again, remembering nothing else, remember the gift chart, that it is not going to be a fair share campaign. It's going to be very few brothers that will make that $4 million example possible. And again, it doesn't matter if it's 40 million or 400 million or 4 billion, like some universities are doing. It's still your top 20, top 25 people, families, private foundations that will make it happen. So,
Wes, thank you both so much for your time. Brothers, we'll go into our last session and we'll wrap up, of course, being cognizant of your time and the time you spent with us this afternoon. So you'll find that last link in the conference program. But again, Mark, Wes, thank you both again for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.